Hi ladies, I just thought that I would give you a little quick early bird special about Boro Stitching. Um, I've mentioned it a couple of times and people seem to not be terribly familiar with it. The Boro is a Japanese technique that involves mending. It's a visible mending technique, and it originated in an area with extreme poverty. People would actually purchase rags and scraps which they could use to mend the cotton indigos that they usually wore. The stitching involved placing a piece of um, mending fabric over top of the area that needed to be mended and stitching in straight lines through it to hold it in place. The, um, the name Boro means rag, and it's really quite lovely when you see heavily mended garments that are done like that. In India, the same technique of stitching is known as Kantha, although Kantha usually involves parallel rows of stitching that hold two layers of cotton together. Frequently it's in a quilt or some sort of a coverlet technique. Lately, in the last couple of years, it's known in the US as slow stitching or visible mending. Now, what it involves is a needle like this. This is a sashiko needle. It's a longer needle with a large eye. Um, you can also use an embroidery needle or a chenille needle, one of the needles that you would use for heavier threads. It's important though that it's a good sharp one because sometimes it gets a little hard to pull through. These are the sashiko needles. Some of them are really, really quite long. You can see here that they're really quite long. And that's because you're doing a running stitch and you want to be able to pick up as much as you can because it is a utility stitch. And you don't want to waste time with the pretty stuff. You're trying to get something mended so it can be used or worn. The threads are the same as you would use for sashiko. There's a lot available and in a lot of colors. Traditionally it was the blues, the indigos and the whites and off-whites, but if you search the internet you can find tons of sashiko thread, which works out just great. Now the stitching, what I'm using here are some indigos, some Japanese indigos, and I'm doing a variety of patterns because things evolve. For example, there is some parallel stitching, like here. There's parallel stitching, there's curved stitching in this wave pattern, and then there's cross hatching like this. So there's a variety of different stitches that you can do, and it's all very simple, just using this bigger needle, just going through and making these parallel stitches and then pulling it through. Now this sometimes it's difficult to get through multiple layers, so traditionally they would all be mending without batting. For us, you can do batting, but make sure it's a lightweight and your needle's very sharp because getting through two layers of cotton with the batting is sometimes extremely difficult, and it's a lot easier, especially if you're just getting started, to do without. It's actually very, very restful and relaxing. the the whole technique excuse me, is very, very simple, very relaxing, almost kind of zen, you know, you just stitch. And it's not planned stitching necessarily. I mean, you can have an idea in your head, but you don't necessarily have to follow any particular pattern. Now, what follows this is going to be a slideshow with some examples of Boro stitching, sashiko stitching, and a couple of projects that I found that are kind of fun. Well, one is a project, the other is just informational. There is a company in Japan that specializes in selling Boro garments, old ones. They're lovely, they really are. And I'm going to give you the link to visit this site, and the gentleman that runs the site has a very informative article on Boro stitching and the history of it. Also, I'm going to give you a link to the Victoria and Albert Museum in London, because they have a section on their website called Make and Do. And in their Make and Do section, they have the instructions to make a Boro handbag. So you can explore further if you're interested. I'll also give you a suggested reading list. So this will all be slides at the end. So thanks for watching. I'm happy to be able to get back to our early birds, and hopefully we'll be able to do more in upcoming months. I'd love to get these early birds on tape so that we can refer back to them and view them whenever we want to. So have a good day, and we'll see you soon. Bye.